What is happening, gentlemen? It's been a minute. I decided that I'd like to shoot a reaction video. This one is, I haven't watched any of these reaction videos. It's usually the first time, but this is from Andrew Huberman and Theo discussing the science of pornography addiction. So I hope there's going to be something that I can add to this conversation or some feedback that I can give. But either way, you'll get to hear my opinion on it. So let's jump into it.
Huge problem that's about to happen in the world is pornography addiction, right? I believe it's humongous. I believe it's bigger than alcoholism. I believe it's like the wave of it that we're starting to see, like people really suffering from it. I think it's one of the reasons why there's a lot of divorce. What do you see like neuroscientific about how people can start to manage that? And then even just what you just talked about dopamine, it's like, I think it's helping people realize with that it's like such a hole that you're getting into. Whatever that thing's called, no pun intended. How can people start to cut that off for themselves? Is there anything they can do, manage, like, or do they have to get help if they believe that they're suffering from like pornography or sexual addiction?
Yeah. Super important questions. I'm so glad you're raising this because, it's interesting. If you look at the research on pornography and sexual behavior generally, right? What you'll find mostly in the academic studies of those areas is kind of an attempt to normalize a lot of behavior. There are reasons for that, some pseudo-political, some just kind of the way those studies were done for a long time. But it's really important to emphasize that it takes a while for science to catch up to culture.
Okay. It takes a while for science to catch up to culture.
Yeah. And the reason is not because scientists are lazy or they're uninterested, is that doing science well takes a long time. Look, I've run studies in my lab on animals, on humans,
Okay, I actually have something to say. This is so cool to actually hear. Is it Dr. Huberman say this? That it takes a while for science to catch up to culture. I would agree with that. When I started doing this, first I started blogging in 2012 about my experience quitting pornography. People thought I was crazy. Therapists, doctors, rehabs, everybody thought that it was insane to talk about quitting pornography addiction. And it was like that for many years, 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. I think it only started coming around in about 2019 after COVID. People started really realizing the impact of pornography. Until today, there are things like porn-induced erectile dysfunction, things like your ADHD and hypersexuality, and how men who struggle with ADD and ADHD are more likely to be porn addicts. Things like how pornography affects your brain in terms of focus, brain fog, how pornography can even change your sexual preferences, getting you to prefer men sexually or getting you to prefer transgender individuals, and how there's pornography that is specifically designed to do that. So it's going to be interesting to hear what he says about the science being done well, because during this time, people are struggling. And one of the things that we face here at Porn Reboot is people saying, well, you're not a doctor, well, you're not a therapist. And that's true. We don't diagnose people's issues and say that you have a pornography addiction. We don't get to do that. But we are professional coaches. We are recovery coaches. We are lifestyle coaches. We are wellness coaches who have worked with a lot of people and also have our own personal experience with this. And I think when it comes to culture, I'll say this. If the culture of coaches can help you end your behavior, then I highly recommend that you do that, because I was a complete loser. I was a person who had the brain fog, who had a porn-induced erectile dysfunction, who had low self-esteem, who could not focus. My prefrontal cortex was totally messed up, and I was headed towards a path of disaster. And I was very confused because I was not doing drugs. Yeah, I smoked weed, I drank, but I wasn't doing hard drugs. I came from a good family. I didn't come from a broken home. I didn't have any sort of sexual trauma growing up. So for me, it was very strange that I was acting like somebody who was in the later stages of a substance abuse behavior. But basically, I was just a full-blown porn addict. And it was things like coaching and many of the interventions we have now that saved us. So basically, if that's the culture that's going to help us, I'm all for it.
Clinical trials, it takes a long time, like 3-4 years sometimes,
to get real information,
to get a really good study done. Meanwhile, life is happening, and in the last 5 years, especially, there's been an exponential growth of the amount of pornography available online, the different formats, right? OnlyFans, all the different sites that people can go to.
Oh yeah,
free,
AI,
and within each of those, there's also been a huge amplification of what's called like high intensity porn. What's high intensity porn? It's more than two people. It's BDSM. Now, BDSM is its own discussion that maybe we could talk about at some point, just separately, about this merge of pain and pleasure. That the reason, the punchline is that dopamine is also increased by what we call the cessation of pain. When pain starts and then stops.
Okay, so no offense to the good Dr. Huberman, but it's cute that, he's like, it's become more intense. It's more than one person or more than two people, bro. People were having orgies in ancient Greece, right? Or he's like, increase in BDSM. BDSM was in pornography in the 80s and the 90s. This is a good thing because it probably means that Dr. Huberman didn't even watch much pornography in the last 20 years, okay? But no, y'all, it is worse than that, okay? And you guys know that. At the time that I was ending my behavior with pornography, it was already getting crazy. Like, there was gore stuff, there was scat, there was a lot of the transgender stuff that was becoming normalized. There was a lot of the hypnotic stuff, which I just thought back then it was a niche part of the internet when I was struggling of the porn webs, or whatever you want to call it, when I was struggling with this. And I come to hear from clients now that all that hypnotic stuff is now a full-blown genre on its own. Back then, for me to even run into that stuff, I would have to be like on 2 back-to-back days of binges. That doesn't mean I was binging for 2 days. It just means like I would have like a 9 p.m. to like a 3 a.m. binge, and then the next day I'd have another. So I'd be in a relapse using the same tabs for me to like get into those really, really weird parts of all the porn sites. So it's the things that he is saying are extreme are, bro, y'all know, those of you watching, y'all know what's out there. Okay, let's get back to what he's saying. I may have to jump through if he's just talking about BDSM and a basic
ops, you get an amplified dopamine surge. So a lot of people are watching or engaging in what we would call violent porn, right? And we're, as primate species, humans, we have an empathy. So when people are watching pornography, they're obviously not experiencing the same things exactly those people are doing and experiencing, but they're tuning into it, right? Yeah. They're getting to it. And we can only speculate as to what they're doing to themselves, right? Yeah. Typically, when we're talking about porn, let's just be direct, we're also talking about masturbation, right? Typically, when we're talking about watching video porn, sometimes it's women, most often it's men by a huge majority.
Oh yeah, the men are the one watching it.
Yeah. Although, years ago I had a girlfriend, a woman I was dating very seriously, and she confessed to me that prior to our relationship, she had developed a porn compulsion. It wasn't an addiction. Addiction, again, is a progressive narrowing of the things that bring you pleasure. It hadn't taken her to the point where it was destructive, but she had the wisdom to cut herself off from it early on. Okay. So it does happen with women, but it's much more frequent with men. So here's the thing. We can think of pornography now as like the methamphetamine of pornography compared to the pornography of, we always hear about, like when I was growing up,
drawings,
the Playboy, or the thing when I was a kid, like I'll confess this first, didn't know I was going to do a confession, but they had those like sex education books where they were like sketch drawings in pencil.
Oh yeah. Bring them
and
up.
When I was, probably 14, 13, I was like,
no, we have a blocker on it.
No, these are, there we go. So in a young brain, this is very important, and it relates to everything we're talking about today. From about age 0 to 25, your brain is incredibly plastic. It's modified by experience, just by being in those experiences.
When you say plastic, you mean it's more like it's not solid yet?
That's right. You can literally wire neurons, plasticity. You wire neurons to other neurons very readily. I mean, this was known for a long time, but it was really formalized by my scientific great-grandparents, David Hubel and Torsten Wiesel. They won a Nobel Prize for showing that if you take a cat, a monkey, or a kid, and you close one eyelid for just a few hours each day, the brain becomes blind to visual input through that eye once you open the eye up, unless you do something else like close the other eye in order to reverse that plasticity. However, if today I just said, yeah, that's how fast and permanent it is unless you do something to reverse it. But if I did that same thing to you now or me now, there'd be no brain change. You close your eye, obviously you can't see through a closed eye. Pop open the eyelid later, you see just fine. So we know that until about age 25, the brain just modifies itself based on experience. So if you're doing cocaine, amphetamine, or let's just stay with this example, you're watching high intensity, violent porn with more than two people, right? We forget that every time you add another person, even if it's two women and one guy, or it's, what's this woman on X? I mean, I have to say it gives me an aversive response, which I think is the healthy response. Every time she announces, I think she's like sleeping with 100 and then 1,000 people. And listen, she's obviously in control of her own
Western
life.
Conference right now. I think I just saw the other day. I don't know what is it Barbara Blues?
Bonnie Blue.
Body Blue.
He said blue.
This is like methamphetamine with heroin, and you get the picture. It's starting to layer in all these different things. And so you think about the young male brain in particular, young female brain watching this stuff. And it's not just setting a behavioral expectation, because we always hear about that. They think sex is like that, and it's not. It's setting this incredibly high threshold for what they consider stimulating, not just.
I will let me add to that one real quick. He says, and I agree with everything he's saying. Very fascinating how he prefaces everything with neuroplasticity and so on. It's not just setting an extremely unrealistic standard, high standard, it's setting an unrealistic standard, because none of those things can be replicated. So it went from, I would say, about 7 or 8 years ago when I was coaching, guys were actually having sex or trying to have sex, and it wasn't matching what they saw in pornography, right? So you had a lot of guys who were worried about the size of their penis. You had a lot of guys who had PIED. You had a lot of guys who were like, oh, she doesn't look hot enough. Her body, she's got cellulite, all of that. It's gone beyond that. Now, men don't even bother dating or trying to have sex because you can just goon. You just goon because there's nothing that is real anymore. So pornography has gone from something that was seen as I would have people in the comment section tell me like, well, JK, some of us don't have access to sex, so pornography is the only other way. And it used to be what pornography, let's go back to the etymology of the word. Pornography is, the Greek root of the word is pornos, which is prostitute, and graphos, which is graphics or writing. So basically, prostitute in writing, or stories of prostitution in writing. And that went to pictures. And then that went to moving pictures and so on. That made sense because you were looking at things that replicated what first prostitutes did. Then it went into what people were doing in their bedrooms. Then we were filming and making up all sorts of scenarios with the pizza guy and all of this, and then incestuous stuff. But now it doesn't even make sense. Now there's no plot. It's gone from stories to short clips to now it's just hypnotic mishmash of stuff to, and again, I keep hearing the hypnotic thing from a lot of my clients, to hentai, to basically a mixture of men and women, transgender, gay, God only knows what else is out there. Basically what's happening for the average man can never be replicated in his life. Like, you will never find a woman who can do those things. You'll never find multiple clips moving like that. You're never going to, I don't know about the transgender stuff or how that works in the real world, but these things are not things that you can replicate with your nervous system with other people. So intimacy is completely out of the intimacy is completely out of the picture. What you should be asking yourself if you're watching this is not, oh, well, what are we going to do about the guys who are gooning? What are we going to do about the guys who are stuck? I think your biggest concern should be that if your behavior is escalating to, and now we have AI stuff, brother, I agree with him on it being like methamphetamine. You need to get off that cold turkey. You need to get away from pornography. like with a quickness.
Stimulating sexually, but stimulating mentally.
Oh yeah.
And
I mean,
it's crazy. It's like, listen, I like playing cards every once in a while. So you go play a card game with your friends. It'd be like the first time you play cards, you got $1 million. You're back there in the high state. You're in like the Dana White room, right? Like I know, like when I see sometimes his gambling hands, right? He's
it's wild,
but he can afford to play,
right?
And he also knows where that fits into the rest of his life. But you think about a kid, you have a chance to win $1 million. Actually, there's this scene in that movie, that show. Remember Succession?
Yes.
A show that it's all about dopamine. This family of rich brats who are completely corrupt. Everything's about more. Dopamine has been called in a book, I forget the author, the molecule of more. It's all about wanting more. And there's this dreadfully sad scene where they go out to play, I think it was like a baseball game or something, and they bring their garden help, and they take the kid and they say, hey, if you can hit a home run, these people's kids, people are clearly, and they say, if you hit a home run, you have $1 million. And you see the anticipation. This would transform these kids and their parents' life. And then he doesn't get the $1 million. And they give him like some watch that's probably worth $25,000. This is dopamine reward prediction error in a nutshell. Had they given him the watch, the family probably would have been pretty thrilled. They could sell it, they could use it. Had they not been involved in the game, their dopamine is the same as when they go home at night. But they had a chance at $1 million. And when they didn't get that, it drops them below baseline. And then you see the kid that evening, like sitting around his apartment, just completely despondent with the watch sitting there as if it was worth nothing. That's dopamine. And when you think about pornography, that's what young people are being exposed to. So their first sexual experiences not only are quite different. Remember, pornography is about, obviously, people are getting aroused by watching.
I agree with this, particularly when I first had sex. I was 21 years old and obviously full-blown porn addict, watch porn every night. And obviously this wasn't game. This was just me going to a club, liking to dance. I would always dance alone. And there was this Russian, I think she's from Latvia, this Latvian girl who had just arrived in the US. She had seen me dancing and she just thought I was cute. So I danced with her. I was drunk off my face. I made out with her. And the next day she came to my place. She said, I want to hang out with you. She came to my place. And I think I was the first person she had sex with in the US. But I just remember not only could I not get hard, but there was nothing about this woman that I found attractive. And over the next couple of weeks, I mean, we hung out, we had sex, but I remember that it was so disappointing. And in a weird way, it was empowering too, because I was like, man, I had looked forward to sex for since I was 14 years old, right? So like what, 6 years or 7 years, whatever, or less. And now I was having it, and it just was nothing like what I imagined, nothing close to it. And that empowered me to be like, yeah, whatever, sex is whatever. But I just remember that later on, sex became amazing. I want to make this clear. So later on, as I started going through the different stages of my reboots and I started putting intimacy into it, I started enjoying sex a lot more. I was of the mindset back then, and I want you guys, here's the point for you guys. If you're saying that, oh, I had sex, or I feel I had sex after being a porn addict and casual sex is empty, before you make that decision, ask yourself, is casual sex empty because of pornography, or is casual sex empty because I do not have intimacy with this person? I won't answer it for you. You have to figure that out for yourself. But my point is, mine wasn't just about intimacy. Mine was about pornography and intimacy. Pornography robbed me of the ability to be intimate, and thus sex became empty for me. Think about it. I'm curious to see what, or hear in the comment section what your experience might have been like. All right, let's finish up the video.
Other people have sex.
Oh, yeah.
And, I don't know what kind of sex people are having out there, but in my experience, the whole business of sex and learning how to have great sex is about learning to be in the experience with somebody, and it's a communication, it's an ongoing communication, and it's about being in the experience, being present, not watching someone else have sex.
Oh yeah, I was thinking the other day, watching some other dude like have sex with a woman, it's kind of, I don't even know if it's homoerotic. I don't know what it is. It's definitely when you take a step back from it, it's a little bizarre. It's definitely intrusive, right? But for surely it alters the way that you think about things. I mean, I know in my own life, I got exposed to pornography real early. I would bike across town to get a little look at some pornos.
Perfectly normal behavior for a young.
You know, the whole cuckold phenomenon of men watching other men have sex with their wives or their partners or having a need for that. When I was single, I started running into this online a lot, especially in a more racial way, where like white guys or Latino guys would want to watch a black man have sex with their partner. So I got a lot of propositions where like back then there weren't any dating apps. So this would just be like on a dating website or some website where you're looking for sex or hookups or whatever. Again, still dealing with pornography and in the latest stages of my reboot. So still watching pornography here and there, but it was definitely reducing at this time. And I was trying to date. And I will say there's a fetish aspect to it, of course, where people are curious. Being in the United States, there's a lot of just weird racial that's going on. But it was definitely a lot more than I expected it to be. Not that I had any of those experiences. I never did. I think it's like super weird to watch another person having sex. I don't know what that would have been like in my early reboot or if I was still a porn addict, but I was just shocked at the number of people who engaged in that. And I remember going back home and watching pornography once when I slipped that was on this cuckold thing that was men watching their partner have sex with other people. And I remember going like, I remember trying to figure, not even being turned on, but trying to figure out, is this amateur pornography or is this scripted? Like they're making it look as if it's amateur pornography. I couldn't understand how men would do that. Like, do they not feel jealousy? Do they feel bored? If they have a black man having sex with their white wife or Latino wife or whatever other race wife, like, do they not view the black man as a human being? So they're like, I don't feel jealousy for you because I'm racist. I don't know. I just didn't know. I was really trying to figure it out. I'll be curious actually to find out what happened sociologically there. And if any of you are into the couple and you're watching this, I'm genuinely curious as to what goes through. Is it an emasculating thing? You don't feel man enough. You feel other types of men are more virile. But what I did find out from working with clients, at least the clients who work with me, was that many of them had pornography tap into a lot of their very deep-rooted racial issues, their deep-rooted insecurities about themselves. So it wasn't always like a racial thing. Sometimes just had other men have sex with their partners. And this is one of the insidious things about pornography, that it taps into very deep emotions. Because remember this, when you are viewing pornography, you are in a trance state. I'll say it again. When you're daydreaming, when you're really, really angry, when you are taken over by certain emotions, you enter a trance state, which means that in that state, you are susceptible to certain suggestions. You can even call these hypnotic suggestions, which is my theory as to why a lot of these hypnosis videos are out there right now, sending messages to men that whatever, give women your money, you're less than a man, you're a sissy, this type of man is better than you, that type of man is better than you. And I've heard it all from my clients, just really up things that they're worthless, they should. But what this does is that this taps into your unconscious mind. It taps into some of your deepest insecurities, things that you probably have no business touching or diving that deep to deal with in your lifetime. Like they should have probably stayed suppressed or buried wherever they were, and they would have just disappeared over time as you replaced them with more positive feelings and achievement in life. But you're making these achievements in life, you're working towards a better life, and then you're watching this fucked up pornography once a week or multiple times a week that's digging up all these fucked up feelings. So I'll sometimes talk with other therapists at conferences and they bring up issues that they're dealing with their clients. And sometimes I just ask, may I ask how much pornography this person watches? And they're like, yeah, he has a porn problem, but I wouldn't say that's the main thing. I think there's a root cause, blah, 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 blah. With the way, like Dr. Huberman is saying that pornography is like the methamphetamine of, for the brain, it has more or less the same impact, is what he's saying. If pornography is that powerful, I think it is time for us to stop ruling out the possibility that it is doing some really messed up things to the mind psychologically. And I'm starting to see, I mean, we have to, I hate to say this, we have to screen even harder because we have a lot of men in whom pornography has basically been the trigger for mental illness for them. I won't even say any more on that. Let's wrap the video up, but that's probably a topic for another day.
Male.
Pretty normal. I was breaking into houses to freaking, get off.
I have friends like you growing up. Where did you grow up?
Louisiana.
All right. I had friends growing up. I mean, in South Bay Palo Alto was pretty tame, but when I started getting into the skateboard thing, we drew from kids from all over. And listen, I'm very grateful for that early exposure.
Oh yeah, it's easy to jerk off if you got some good graffiti.
Oh no, I meant early exposure to kids that from all walks of life. But I knew kids like you breaking into houses.
Oh, dude, yeah, I remember. Yeah, it would be crazy. You would just like breaking in that. Just like, we made some poor choices.
All right. Guys, I appreciate your watching. Thank you all so much for that. I really didn't know how that was going to go. I thought they were going to go a little bit deeper, but good points there. Let me know in the comment section if you want to see more reaction videos. This was a relatively tame one, but if there's some crazy-ish out there that you want to hear my opinion on, I'm happy to talk about it. All right. Thank you guys for watching. I'm JK, your brother in the struggle. I'll see you later on in the week. Bye.